Ed. Thanks for coming today.
You're welcome.
Tell us a little bit about you. You're a home inspector. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm from Niagara my whole life. I've got 4 kids. I've got a blended family. We've been married 6.5 years now. My wife Nancy. I like to be active as far as sports goes and just exercising that and love Jesus.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And how long have you been doing home inspections?
For 18 years.
Wow.
Yeah, 18 years. Got a background before that in construction as well. But this is my 18th year.
Good for you.
Yeah.
That's an accomplishment.
Yeah.
Why did you choose home inspection?
The first home I bought, we had home inspected, and I thought I kind of liked the process. I liked learning about the house as we went through with them. In my previous job, I just thought as I get older, it's going to be a little bit tougher on the body, and the winters were long and cold outside, working outside. So I thought I'm going to maybe try and make a switch, and so I did. Took a few years, but made the switch.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Never looked back.
No, not at all. I love it. I love it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me 3 interesting facts about yourself.
When I was younger, I lived in Australia for 6 months. So I went to a Bible school just for personal growth. Nothing, nothing. How do you say it? Not accredited, right?
Yeah.
Just personal. So I got to travel around Australia and be there for 6 months. It was an awesome experience. So much fun. And my parents had a cottage for about 30 years, so I spent a lot of time up north, near North Bay. And that was like a lot of my younger years were spent there in the summers on the lake and fishing and swimming and in the winter as well. So yeah, that's
awesome.
Yeah.
That sounds like adventure.
Yeah.
And you're drawn to being outside.
Yeah, for sure. Did a lot of camping, did a lot of Algonquin trips and snowmobiling over the years as well. That was a lot of fun as well. So time for everything. Right?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
And you have that as a priority. I'm sure your kids have loved doing that kind of stuff with you guys.
Yeah,
that's
for
awesome.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to the nitty-gritty, the home inspection questions. So there's lots of myths around home inspection, and here's one myth I have for you. That home inspectors are brought in to help negotiate the price. Can you elaborate? Tell us, what's the purpose of a home inspection?
I would boil it right down to saying the purpose is to make sure the house is working like it should. And it sounds very, very simple, but it's kind of like a safety on a car, right? There's safety things that you need to make sure are functional and working and operable. And right down to turning the taps on, flushing the toilets, turning the lights on, and checking the different ages of parts of the house as well. But really, if you boil it right down, I want to make sure the windows are opening and closing and the house is working like it should on a daily basis.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's not about negotiating the price.
No,
it's
exactly.
About
no, it's not.
Sure.
It's me giving you kind of a checklist and inventory. Say this is what your house is. This is what your house has. Is that what you thought, or is it a little bit more than you expected, or less than you expected? But it's not. The main purpose is not to renegotiate.
And I think that's so important for buyers to know, because kind of in the back of their mind they're thinking that, oh, we're going to get something off the price, or when you go into it knowing you paid this, you purchased the home, this is what you purchased. Looking at the home, you expect it to be like that. Any unexpected surprises, that makes sense.
Correct.
as to look for. But
I would agree. So like when I get on the roof or in the attic, or I might just be looking at things with a little bit different eye than you as an agent or a buyer. You're right. Like if I said, well, there's a bunch of shingles missing, then we maybe need to do something about that. Or you have some mold in the attic. You didn't put your offer in knowing that. So then of course it's something to discuss with your agent. Yeah.
Absolutely. I love that. Thank you. Now, what is the average cost of home inspection, and who pays for it?
Average cost is about $500, give or take, for a house of about 2,000 square feet or under. Condo is a little bit cheaper. Townhouse sometimes a little bit cheaper. First time buyer, I give $50 off just as say, hey, congratulations. And so that's what it costs, and it's typically the buyer that is paying for the home inspection.
Awesome.
Pre-listing inspection is a kind of a different conversation maybe, but sometimes people are getting pre-listing inspections before they list their house.
Why would that be a benefit to the seller?
Yeah, I think it shows good faith. They don't have to show that report to the prospective buyers, but they can. So in that sense, they're saying to them, this is what we know the house is, and we're not hiding anything. If they don't want to share it, that's fine, but they also can just say, okay, well, we didn't know this about the house, we're going to fix this and these little things before we sell it. At least they're not caught off guard when someone says, hey, you need a new roof, and someone wants $50,000 off and it's only going to be 10. You know, so it just puts, I think it helps them and you as an agent put the price and the house in perspective.
I love it. I think that it has its time and place, and there are some advantages to it for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so who should be present at the home inspection and why?
As an agent, you guys should be there, which you are, and the buyer should come as well, if at all possible. I really think that's where the value is in the inspection, is seeing what I'm doing, hearing what I'm saying and explaining. They get the report after, with all the pictures and the information that we've talked about. But the benefit of being there is that we can discuss it right then and there. When you read the report, if you're not there, it does seem bigger, like there's more concerns, more problems, because that's all you're reading. You know, change this, correct this, and when you're at the house, it just feels different. Yeah. And
I've seen that myself with you, and I was like really impressed that the buyer had so many questions, and they wouldn't have thought of those questions had they not been walking through. And when there was an issue, you were able to answer all those questions right there and make it more clear for them, and then we could discuss next steps right away. So I love that.
And I always encourage them to give me a call or email back and communicate back if they have more questions, but we can really get the bulk of it at the inspection.
That's awesome. So should the buyers bring anything to the inspection? How can they prepare for it?
Honestly, don't think they have to bring anything. Some people like a pad and paper, which is fine. I'm not offended if they want to take down notes, but I do relay to the people that everything is written down and everything will be in the report that we talk about. You'll have pictures of what we've looked at as well. I don't think they have to bring anything except for just their inquisitive nature to learn about the house. Like they want to come and learn what they're buying and going to be living in.
That's awesome. Yeah, I like that. It makes them feel more prepared when they're coming into their home. Like they've been their walkthrough probably the first time it only took an hour at most.
Right. Yeah.
And so this is a deeper look inside the house.
Yeah.
So I like that. How long does an inspection usually take?
I'd say about 2 hours, give or take. I usually get there a few minutes early. Start on the outside, usually before the buyer gets there, and then when they come, I kind of review that with them. But then the whole process is about 2 hours, give or take. I leave myself enough room. If it takes 3, I've got time to do that, but we can usually get it done in about 2 hours. Yeah, like I said, start on the outside. I start on the roof and the exterior first. I feel like that gives me a good bearing of potential concerns inside the house. For instance, if the grading is all sloping towards the house, then I might think, okay, I wonder if there's any basement concerns, any leakage concerns. If the grading and downspouts are all not done nicely and the water's flowing away, I would feel a little bit better about once I get into the house and looking into the basement. But start on the roof and the exterior. So once I'm inside the house, then I usually start from the top down. So I'll look in the attic, and then I'll just kind of go from room to room, from on the second floor, main floor, and then into the basement. Each room has this procedure as well. I check the windows and the doors in each room, check the receptacles. When I get into the bathrooms, I'm checking that the toilet and the sink and the showers are all running, working properly, that the flow is good, that the pressure's not poor, and then obviously check for leaks there. And we just do that room by room as we make our way down to the basement of the house.
See, there's so much value in doing a home inspection, because when you're not checking all of those things when you do a walkthrough.
Right.
And especially going into the attic, those are things that you might just expect it's probably fine, but I had my own experience where there were raccoons living in the attic. So
Yeah.
it's surprises that the seller wasn't aware of at the time either.
Yeah.
But I think, you definitely see the value in it, and I appreciate you telling us how to walk through, because there's so much that surrounds buying a home that is like overwhelming or confusing, and they kind of feel left in the dark in it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And even I've had people say to me, even like you walk into a bedroom and you're there for, let's just say 2 or 3 minutes. It doesn't take long in a bedroom per se. But walking into a room and kind of turning around and looking at the window, it's still, now it has another different feel than when you walk through it, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm checking the receptacles in the windows, and I'm looking at the ceiling for patches or water damage or cracking. And I explain that to people, and then they say, oh yeah, and then they look around and it just feels, the house feels different as you walk through. Yeah.
And the buyer's looking at it through an emotional, like they're picking out their paint colors.
Yes.
And so you are helping them
I'm slowing things down. Okay,
Yeah.
look at this, and just explaining what they have. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much value with that. I think so. So what would you say are the top questions that a home buyer should ask an inspector?
I would say, how long in the business, or what's your construction background? Those are kind of 1A, 1B. Some of the newer inspectors are learning it through Niagara College or an online course, which is fine. It's hard to relay that to practical experience. Now they may have both, and that's great. But I think those type of things, being around a construction site, just helps to understand what you're looking at and seeing. I think those are two big things to ask. Some people are concerned about the designations, which is fine. I'm an RHI, a registered home inspector, and a national certificate holder. Most people don't care about that, to be honest, because and you as an agent, I think, are the best gauge to who's a good inspector and who's not. Because you see us every day, you see a variety of us, and so everybody can have the same knowledge, but sometimes it just comes down to presentation, and that's fair. Some people present a little bit differently, but I think for someone asking a home inspector is ask their background, construction background, number of houses they've inspected, and
awesome.
maybe for a few references as well.
Exactly. References, even who would somebody recommend if we know a home buyer that they spoke to, that somebody else used, and they recommend somebody. What I value is when a buyer has gone through the house, they're going through and they're expecting a home inspection to tell them all these problems. If they're so inexperienced and you say, oh, this is not grounded, like they may think that is a huge deal, something major. Oh my gosh, I have to do all the electrical. But I find that the way you deliver is very calming and helps them see this is what cost will probably be. Yeah. And you have that knowledge of 18 years of experience of I've seen these are the problems, and this is what you might have to expect, how long you might have to expect this will last still, or how much it might cost. Yeah. So I think there's value there. There's value there.
Well, and I feel like I'm not an alarmist. I like to think myself as a realist, and just that I put things into perspective. And some people do think that that every problem is a big problem, or every thing that should be corrected or changed is a big problem. But every house has things that they should change and correct over time. And most of the things are just that, just things that you should correct and change over time, kind of have a plan of how to do that. There's really not much that we find in a home inspection that is, whoa, let's not buy this house. Most things can be dealt with. And most things can be dealt with, and it might be a little bit more money than you expected, but it can be corrected. Yeah.
Okay, so what are the most common problems or concerns that you come across in our area in Niagara? What are the most common problems that you see?
Probably moisture in the basement. Now that so let me back up. I don't think there's anything strictly problem-wise. Can't think of the word.
No, that's okay.
Strictly a problem in Niagara.
Okay.
Like I think, like we don't have to worry about termites. That's kind of around
Yeah.
the corner in Toronto and Oakville. We don't have to worry about termites. I think the maybe the most common problem I find is water in the basement, some mold in the attic, but that's not just exclusive to Niagara. I think those are probably two of the bigger common problems that I find, or that we have to kind of talk through and deal with. Yeah, sometimes there's some plumbing issues and electrical issues, but again, those are, as long as they haven't done significant damage already, they can be corrected and moved on from there pretty easily.
Perfect. Will you be able to uncover everything that might be wrong? Tell us about what you can't see.
I feel like that was like a slow pitch, like a real easy one for me. No, I can't find everything, and I won't find everything. To be fair to me, sometimes you have to live in a house for a while to see how it works, lives and breathes, and maybe you have 6 people in the house. I inspected a house where there were 2 people. It was a 3,000 square foot house, and they were moving. It was too big, and a family of 10 actually moved in, and the amount of water that they used, because there were 10 people, changed how the pipes flexed and went out to the septic system. Long story short, the one line leaked that went out to the septic system. I would have never found that with 2 people living in the house. They're doing loads of laundry every day. So sometimes it does just take people living in a house. But we go through the normal cycles of living in a house. Like I said, when I go into a room, I turn the lights on, close the door, open the windows, run the toilet, flush the toilet, do all the daily things. So we try and cross off as many of those T's and dot those I's as possible. But sometimes you have to live in a house. Sometimes you find things that we weren't able to see during an inspection. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. And do you think, is there something specific that like you will educate them on? I am checking for all of these things, but here's what I can't guarantee, or what I can't confirm for you. Yep.
And that's a good question. Usually it comes down to structural stuff, like maybe in a crawl space, for instance. I think people obviously know I can't break a hole in the wall, right? But I've got testers to test the electrical circuits. I've got a moisture meter that I use to check if there's an area that I think might be wet or is suspicious for being wet, along with an infrared camera. So those tools we can use, not to look in the wall, but to get better clues about how we feel about what we're seeing at the inspection. Because the inspection is a visual inspection, and so we have some of those tools. We just don't dismantle things in the house.
That's very helpful. That's good to know. Okay, no, we already kind of talked about that. Nope, talked about that. Nope. Oh, okay, so you just touched on thermal imaging, right? Yeah. So you use that. Why would you use that? Why wouldn't you, sorry, I'm going to go back. You talked about thermal imaging, and this is something that you use. Why is it beneficial?
It checks the surface temperature on the walls or ceilings or floors, whatever I'm looking at. And so from that, we can deduct a few things. Missing insulation, electrical concerns. If a receptacle, for instance, is warm, it shouldn't be. A GFI receptacle is warmer. But what I've got to determine is if that color that I'm seeing as I'm scanning with the infrared camera is normal or not. So missing insulation, electrical concerns, moisture in the wall for sure, and sometimes structural issues, but not as much. And so, like I said, an inspection is visual. So as I'm looking at the wall, if I don't see a water stain, I don't suspect water. But as my camera goes across it and I see a blue spot or an area like that, it might show up that I'd have to grab my moisture meter and kind of double check and see what is coming up as an anomaly. And so I'll kind of double check that part.
That's awesome. That sounds very helpful. So for first-time home buyers, I think they're probably the most nervous about purchasing a home, and really nervous when it comes to finding out what's behind the walls, or what problems may come up. When you walk buyers through the house, I see that you're very comfortable in educating them as to what they're looking at, and I think there's so much value in that. Do you have any tips for first-time home buyers?
I can tell when a first-time buyer is kind of really taking in what I'm explaining. I would just say be inquisitive. Like, just ask a lot of questions about how the house is going to function. Even because we go through this every day, and this is our job, and sometimes you get complacent and you kind of just expect that people know certain things. Mm-hmm. And so it's good for them to just say, what is that? Like, some people young, I'm just looking at a phone jack on the wall there. A lot of young clients don't know what a phone jack is. They've never seen a phone jack. So it is funny, it happens. But yeah, just to ask a lot of questions, be inquisitive, because you're going to be, we all know it's the most expensive item we're going to buy or purchase, in our life, right? A lot of young clients don't know what a phone jack is. They've never seen a phone jack. So it is funny, it happens. But yeah, just to ask a lot of questions, be inquisitive, because you're going to be, we all know it's the most expensive item we're going to buy or purchase, in our life, right? And so just knowing how to take care of that as well is just, it's good value to just be inquisitive about what you're buying. Biggest thing is probably the eave troughs and downspouts and the grading on the outside. If you can keep 90% of the water running away from the house as opposed to towards the house, you're going to be better off. So if you can manage that water, that's number one, I would say. And then on the inside, it's really the age of the house as well. Like, a block foundation is naturally a little bit more porous. Stone foundation obviously is porous, right? So like I said, I feel like I'm a realist. So if there's a stone foundation, I try and relay to people, there's a good chance, and the basement is probably going to leak at different times of the year. You'll see a trickle come in different spots of the foundation of the basement, for instance. Now there's ways around that, and that's kind of for another conversation. But yeah, the best thing to do is to just have your expectations in line as well, whether you're going to finish the basement or not. Yeah. You should know that it's going to be a dry basement. Maybe live with it for a season, kind of go through at least one season of spring and fall and winter and summer, before you start finishing the basement right away. Yeah. And just see how it reacts and how it lives.
I think that really helps kind of dispel all the concerns, at least to make you not be scared off. You don't have to be completely afraid. Most basements have experienced that at one time or another, depending on the age, right?
That's true. Yeah. And it's kind of an analogy we use in home inspection is we put a well in the ground because we want to get water out of the ground. But we put a basement in the ground and we don't want water to get in. So you tell me who's going to win, right? Yeah. So it's managing the water on the outside. That's your best bet.
That's a good one. Yeah. So is there anything else that you'd like to add that a home buyer should know when it comes to inspection?
I would say the best thing for a buyer of a home to do is to be at the inspection. If at all possible, you don't buy a house every day. Mm-hmm. Try and get the time off work or work your schedule, or I'll work with your schedule as well. But try and be there, and just ask a lot of questions. Don't worry that I'm gonna think that the question is stupid. I've heard, well, just when I think I've heard all of them, there'll be a new one. But there's lots of questions, and I love the part of explaining it to people. So I love the educating people part of it, and so. I enjoy that. I would say be at the inspection, ask lots of questions, and take in as much as you can. Just be a big sponge. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much for this. I really appreciate it. And I think that's it.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Good job.
So we have Ted here from Cornerstone. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.